Hi, good morning, everyone. I should be cautious. I always say good morning when I start these 9 a.m. sessions, but for some of you, it may not be morning. So, hello and welcome. My name is Ali Wood-Warren, and we're here today to just talk to you a little bit about getting ready for winter term. Got some other folks with me here, so we will get to introductions in a moment. So, I just wanted to say welcome. The other thing I wanted to mention is, even though we are together virtually, it's important that we acknowledge that the University of Manitoba campuses are located on the original original lands, of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Many students see us and hear us acknowledge our land, and that's very important to us at the university, that we make that acknowledgement every time we get together. And so again, as I said, although we're here virtually together, it's important that we do make that acknowledgement as well. As I mentioned, we have a number of folks with us here, and I'm going to actually let these lovely ladies who are with me introduce themselves. And since it looks like science is the first on the slide, maybe Kathy, you can start us off.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kathy Synkiw, and I'm one of the academic advisors in the Dean's Office in the Faculty of Science.
Hi, I'm Lesley Wiebe, and I'm the undergraduate program manager in the Faculty of Arts.
And I'm going to jump in here because I am actually from the First Year Center. So you met me already. My name is Ali, and our lovely advising coordinator, Bridget
Wiebe, but no relation to Lesley, folks. Sharing a last name.
And so Bridget works as our University of Manitoba Services. Sorry, Bridget, I didn't.
With all the academic advisors at the University of Manitoba.
That's good. Thank you very much. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we really dive into content here. Some of you may have questions, and we want to make sure that all of your questions are answered today. I'm going to be turning the chat function off for the time being. We'd like you to listen, make note of your questions. Most of the time we find that students' questions are answered through these sessions. But if there's at the end, you still have questions, we'll open the chat room up, and I'll let everyone know when that happens. If you can keep in mind, though, when you are asking your questions, all comments made in the chat will be visible to everyone. So it's important to be respectful and just keep that in mind. And not that I expect this to happen, but any disrespectful, behavior, I'm going to remove you from the room, and you won't be permitted back in. But we don't have to worry about that. That's not going to happen. So having said all of this, I'm going to dive right in, and Bridget's going to talk to us about what's the point of today.
So we want to spend a little time with you going over three basic things. The first is that we really want students to finish the fall term strong. I know this has been very, a very odd, unusual term, but I hear from a lot of advisors and students how people are just making it their own and doing really well with it. So we want to continue that progress. We want to talk to you about preparing for the winter term, which is coming up in about a month. And then we're going to talk about the grading accommodations that were passed at Senate last week.
Okay, so there we go.
All right, so here we are, folks, on the last day of classes for the fall term, and tomorrow is when the exam period starts. So I know it's imminent, but there are still a number of things that you can do to make sure you're ready to write your exams, finish the fall term as strong as you can before you start preparing for the winter term. And of course, there are some things we hope you'll avoid while you're writing exams or preparing to write exams. So here's just a quick list of do's and don'ts to help you finish the fall term strong. If you have never checked out any of the academic success workshops through the Academic Learning Center, we strongly encourage you to do that. There is particularly one or two that are really relevant to students right now. If you go to the Academic Learning Center's website, you will see a list of workshops. We particularly recommend the sessions on preventing procrastination and preparing for final exams. I think Ali will be sharing some links for you in the chat that you can use. But if you just go to the Academic Learning Center's website, you will find those. The Academic Learning Center also hosts some online study power hour sessions. So if you're kind of missing the group study or studying with friends on campus, this is a way of sort of virtually studying in a group. And you also have the chance to ask questions while you're in that group. There are going to be learning experts there from the Academic Learning Center to facilitate those study power hours. So that's something else that the Academic Learning Center is offering. If you feel like you just need a bit of a change up to the way you're studying, I really encourage you to check those out. The other thing, of course, we need you to do is check your exam schedule very, very carefully. You probably checked it when it came out in October and maybe wrote everything down in your calendar or put it in your phone. I would really encourage you to check it again and maybe even have someone else check it with you to make sure that you've entered things correctly in your calendar. You would be surprised how many students every year call us in a panic saying, I wrote down that my exam was at 1:30 and it was actually at 9, or I wrote down the wrong date. So even if you think you have it memorized, check it again and check it again the day of your exam. It is very, very easy to make those kind of mistakes, and you really don't want the stress of having realized that you showed up late to your exam.
Kathy, I'm just going to pop in here and show students right here. So I hope, can you tell me if you can see Aurora on my screen?
Yep.
Yep. So it's in registration, or excuse me, you can find your exam schedule, enrollment in academic records, and then the registration and exams tab, and then my exams right here. And I'm going to click it and it's going to tell me I don't have any exams because I'm not in any courses right now, but that's where you're going to find your exam schedule in Aurora.
Thank you, Ali.
You're welcome. And can you see back to the presentation again?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, so one last point there is I just think that, you know, most of you will be writing your exams at home. All of you will be writing your exams at home or in another location where you're writing online. And so this is a really good time to remind other members of your household that you are going to be writing exams and when they are, to make sure that you are going to be undisturbed during that time. It's very, very important that you have no distractions around, if at all possible. The last thing we want you to make sure that you do is a tech check. Again, with online exams, 5 minutes before the exam starts is not the time to make sure you can access Learn. I learned that, myself this morning. I was very glad I logged in early because I had some major technology problems trying to get connected today. It does happen, and it happens when we least expect it. So, in the theme of being prepared, we would really encourage you to make sure that you can access Learn, that you have a good internet connection, and doing all of those things to try and, turn off Wi-Fi on other devices and all of those things that are recommended. You've probably been experiencing throughout the term with all of your classes. You also want to make sure that you understand your professor's expectations for what materials you can use during the exam, or if you need to install Respondus or any other software that is going to be used to monitor you during your exam. And you have to know what to do if something does go wrong. We certainly hope you won't have any technology issues during your exams. Unfortunately, it does happen, and these things are beyond our control. And there are resources you can go to if something does happen to go wrong. So the Center for Advancement of Teaching and Learning has put together a really good resource for students who are writing online exams. That information was shared with all students in an email from Lori Schnarr yesterday. I think Ali is going to post the link for that as well. So first and foremost, if you have a technical issue during an exam, you want to make sure you contact IST. A lot of the issues can be solved right then and there. If it is something that is more prolonged and interrupts your ability to finish an exam, contact your professor immediately. You send an email to your professor and to your faculty. Even if it's an evening exam, do not wait until the next morning. Send an email right away, because sometimes it's important that we establish a timeline of when things happen. So if you report any issues right away, it makes our job easier when we're trying to straighten it out for you later. Like I said, most of the time technology issues can be solved quickly on your own or with a little bit of help from IST. So the information that Student Affairs sent yesterday summarized everything above about technology and gives some really good resources. So if you haven't checked out that website, just maybe bookmark it so you know where to find it if you need it. And hopefully all of your exam writing will go very smoothly. You don't need technology issues to, rattle you anymore when you're already anxious and nerve-wracked about writing exams. So being prepared in that way is really, really important, especially right now when we're writing all of our exams online. Now, a few don'ts that we want to point out to you for finishing the term strong. This is a stressful time of year. We absolutely recognize it. We get it. We've all been students, and we understand how you feel when you're approaching the exam period. But even though we know you're supposed to feel stress and anxiety, it's very, very normal. There are things you can do to mitigate the effects of those feelings so that they're not super disruptive for you. And there are places you can go for help. The number one thing we want to point out is do not allow the stress or the time crunch that you're feeling right now tempt you into cheating or taking shortcuts. We understand that when you're, wrapping up lots of assignments at once or feeling the pressure of having, 5 exams over 3 days or something, you might be tempted to make some poor decisions and take some shortcuts. It's really important to familiarize yourself with the rules surrounding academic integrity so that you know what constitutes cheating. Cheating, plagiarizing, they can happen unintentionally if you aren't paying attention to the rules or if you're feeling a time crunch and pressure to get things done. But cheating and plagiarism and all of the other things that involve academic integrity can have very, very serious consequences for you, even if you don't do them intentionally. So the bottom line is here too, you'll probably get caught if you cheat. Your professors have lots of experience with the ways that students cheat. They lurk in chat rooms and they use technology to detect cheating. So it really, really, is something we have to emphasize so much is try to protect yourself as much as you can from cheating, because it's so not worth it. So again, acknowledging that this is a very stressful time of year for students, how can you reduce the effects of stress? How can you, make sure that you are finishing the term as healthy and stress-free as possible? Don't forget to take care of yourself. It's really, really easy to, stop eating properly, stop sleeping properly, and feel all of the effects of all this anxiety so profoundly at this time of year if you're not taking care of yourself. To me, the biggest source of anxiety for myself when I was a student, and also in my experience as a student advisor, is feeling that you're not prepared. Is the biggest source of anxiety. So you want to make sure you're doing everything you can to be prepared for this time of year. Obviously, you're going to be studying as much and as effectively as you can right now, but you can't do that at the expense of your health. So you have to remember to eat well, sleep enough, try to get outside and take breaks and get some exercise. It is impossible to sustain days upon days of fast food and no sleep and then expect to be mentally alert enough to write your exams. Over the years, I've actually seen students make themselves physically ill because they overload on sugar and grease and caffeine and are just running on fumes trying to get through the exam period. And that in the end can sometimes make a bad situation worse. You don't want to make yourself sick. This is the time to take really, really good care of yourself. Now, having said that, if anything does prevent you from writing an exam, if you actually do get sick at some point through this exam period, or an unexpected event occurs that prevents you from writing an exam, please contact your faculty right away. There is lots of compassionate support out there for you, but we do need you to reach out to us immediately if something happens so that we can help you. The more time that passes, the fewer options we have to give you. So please contact your faculty right away if you can't finish an exam or can't write an exam because of something unexpected. I had mentioned earlier that if you're writing an evening exam and there's nobody around to call, that you should email us. But if you're writing during the day between 8:30 and 4:30, it is better to call your faculty office because sometimes emails get lost. And if it's time sensitive, we want to make sure that we can help you as quickly as possible. So I think, like I said, the theme of everything that I've been talking about is really preparation. Preparation is the key at this time of year. If you're feeling overwhelmed right now and you're not sure where to start to help be more prepared, take a deep breath first and just start by watching an exam prep workshop on the Academic Learning Center's website. There will be some good tips, maybe something that you haven't tried before or a way of studying that you haven't tried. Make a study schedule for yourself for the next 10 days or however long your exams last. That builds in some time to take care of yourself. And if you use the resources that we've been talking about and know that you're as prepared as you possibly can be, that does help to reduce the stress a little bit. And then finally, once your exams are over, and they will be over, I know it feels like it's going to go on forever, you will have a nice long extended break, a well-deserved break, because classes don't actually start again until January 18th. This is a longer break than normal because there is a period of time set aside in January for any leftover activities that weren't able to take place in the fall term. For many of you, there will be nothing, but some of you, mostly science students, you may still have some lab work to do in January. If this applies to you, you'll have time after your exams are over to double check what you need to do in January. If you have any concerns about attending January lab sessions, please again contact an advisor in your faculty. Advisors are around right until December 23rd, and we are back again on January 5th. So even though classes don't start till the 18th, we will be around on the 5th and we can help you with any of those things in that time. If you don't have any academic obligations until classes start on January 18th, then this is a perfect time, or will be a perfect time, to rest and recharge and make sure that you're ready for the winter term. And I will now turn it over to Lesley.
All right, so that's the perfect segue for things to do to get ready for the winter term. As you already mentioned, classes begin January 18th, and so that gives us about a 2-week window that could perhaps be seen as idle time. And I really do recommend that you've taken the break in winter, and in January, even if you don't have a bunch of coursework to make up or labs to attend, that you try to use that time effectively to get ready and plan. And so the first tip that I always suggest is to be informed. So, you're coming out of a winter term that's going to have final grades, and there's a lot of impact on what those final grades mean for you in progression and moving forward. So the first thing you want to do once the university reopens again on January 5th, our offices will be functioning. We're probably going to be sending out notices and emails and updates to things that you need to start considering. So check your U of M email account daily. I wouldn't just check it once a week. I would look at it daily if that's not part of your practice already. It should be. You also want to check Aurora for your final grades. Grades are due to the registrar's office by the second week of January, but as each professor goes through their marking and grading, they just submit grades when they're finished. So they do pop up randomly throughout that 2-week period. And the sooner you can see what your grade standing is, the better information you have to make decisions, to ask questions, make sure everything is as you expect it to be. our work in the advising office during that time, when final grades come in, is we have to be concerned about progression in courses. So we're looking at different reports that tell us which students have met the grades from fall term in order to stay in their winter term grades. And if your grades weren't as successful as you had hoped and they don't meet the prerequisite standards, actions are going to start to be made where faculty officers are going to start dropping students out of courses. So being aware of what's coming and where you stand can help you ask questions early enough, not be surprised about any actions, and see what other options might be available for you if you need to um, take a different direction or pick up some other courses in your schedule. So be informed. Look at your emails, look at Aurora, and kind of take a stance, take a check at how everything's looking for you. If anything seems odd, out of place, or concerning, that right away the next step would be making an appointment to speak with your faculty advisor, or even just emailing your questions to the advisors. The next thing that I would suggest doing in this time of getting ready before classes start is to use the Achieve audit system. Many faculties have most of their programs, if not all of their programs, tracked and encoded in Achieve so that you're able to run a degree audit or a what if scenario on yourself. The value in that is it gives you the power to do it on your own. You don't have to wait for someone to tell you where your courses fit in a program. You can do that at any time of day, 24 hours a day, and take a look at what you have left to go in your program, if your grades meet the standards, and if you need to change things and look at different course selections. The last thing in that 2-week period, I would say, is really take the opportunity to reassess your strategies and plans. And so Kathy's already mentioned looking at the Academic Learning Center's website for exam prep workshops. But beyond exam prep, there's many other study skills workshops, time management strategies that are explored and explained there. There's virtual sessions, and then there will be live sessions throughout the term that will start to get scheduled. So you want to take a look at what opportunities are there for you to learn new things. You've had a term under your belt in the remote learning world, if not even more than that, if you had taken any summer courses. And so this is a good time to see what really is working for you and what isn't. And if you don't make changes, things really aren't going to change for you. And so, the only way to do something different is to learn a new way to look at it. And so I would say take the opportunity in those 2 weeks to look at these resources, spend some time seeing how they might apply to you, and then make some connections with us service providers on campus as advisors, as learning specialists. When you don't have classes to attend, we might be able to get you into some appointments that will help get you started on the right foot. So the next, we'll move to the next slide, Allie. The next thing that kind of leads to this, talking about final grades, is the decision from Senate last week, where a compassionate grading option has been presented for students, and a memo to all students was sent out yesterday to your U of M email account. You may have already seen it and read it, or maybe this is the first time you're hearing about it, so I do encourage you to go look for that information. It is also posted on the U of M website under the COVID-19 announcements for students. What essentially is being offered here is that the university has agreed to allow students the opportunity to choose to exclude from their U of M GPA either one grade that they receive in the fall term and one grade they would receive in the upcoming winter term to be excluded from the GPA calculation, or if the course that you might want to consider is a spanned course, you could exclude one grade received in a spanned course, which would take up the same capacity as one course in fall and one course in winter. And so this opportunity has been made available to help students with some of the challenges experienced in the remote learning environment, on top of the increasing stressors and challenges we're experiencing specifically in Winnipeg right now. but as well across the world. Ellie, if you could just switch to the next slide.
Oh, if I figure out how, there we go.
So, yeah. So the why to this is to provide some accommodation for potential negative effects. Now, hopefully you've done the best that you can do, and yes, it may have been stressful and may not have been perfect, but perhaps needing to exclude a grade isn't something that's going to make a great difference for you. And that's okay. We have time to figure this out and determine what's useful and beneficial to you. But the thought here is that allowing students to exclude one grade from the calculation might reduce a GPA concern where a poor grade is pulling down the expected or needed GPA, but that students could benefit by the change in GPA, but not have to lose value in completing the course for credit hours where GPA standard is expected. So the second bullet point here says that by allowing you to exclude a grade, but keeping the course for credit and credit hours means that students who might need to have a certain course load for the year or for the term can still be maintained for funding purposes. Can you switch to the next slide, Ellie? So how this is working basically is if you do choose to exclude a grade from the fall or the winter term, that grade value is not going to be counted in the GPA performance requirements for things like progression in a program. If you were on any kind of academic jeopardy like probation, suspensions, or required to withdraw, you could exclude a course and that might help the GPA not put you below the minimum standard. But you would be able to still use that credit hour value for U of M bursaries and scholarships. And so you could still qualify with the exclusion of that grade in the GPA for U of M bursaries and scholarships, but maintain the credit hour value to still qualify. Excluded grades, although they won't count in the GPA, they are still visible on your transcript. So the choice to exclude a grade doesn't erase it. It doesn't take it off. We will see that grade likely with an asterisk symbol, similar to what was offered in the winter term last year. As I've said already, excluding the grade in counting in the GPA is beneficial, but you get to keep your credit hour load for that coursework. And so it helps in maintaining credit hour needs. It will be used if you, even if you exclude the grade, but you did receive a grade that was a minimum acceptable grade to meet progression or prerequisite purposes, that can still be used even if you exclude it, as long as you meet the minimum in the grade that was assigned to you. The grade excluded will be used in any admissions GPA, adjusted GPAs, admissions to another program. So choosing to exclude it offers you the benefit now for progression and GPA in your current program. But if you were to apply to a different program in future years, that course stands alone. It is not excluded from those calculations for admission to a future program.
Les, I'm going to just quickly jump in here, and I'm going to flip the slide as I'm talking, because one thing that we have been asked about these grading options is, what if I want to take courses, or how will other institutions look at these grades? And the very short answer to that is that we don't know. They will look at those grades in the way that those institutions have determined it's appropriate for them. So we can only speak to what we will do with those excluded grades. Other institutions may handle those very differently. So if you are looking at applying to another institution, you have to check with those institutions how they would calculate that. So I'm going to mute again. I just want to jump in and add that piece.
Thanks, Allie. And so on that note, the when part of this is important, because there's a lot of layers and a lot of complexities to making this decision and truly determining how much value it is to you. And the when here is important. You do not have to decide on excluding a grade from the fall term immediately. Actually, students are offered the opportunity to make their decisions about what they may want to exclude from the fall term and the winter term at the end of the winter term. So this is not something that has to be decided immediately in January. The only exception to that would be any students who are in their final term and are expecting to be a February graduate. They obviously need to conclude their program at the end of this term for their February convocation. So they would have to make a decision in January. And more information about that is going to be coming out in January, hence why I'd said it was important to watch your emails right after break, because a lot of this is going to start coming through with details and processes and timelines. But what we have been assured is students who are not in contention for graduation and are needing to continue to take many terms of study or future terms of study, you will be allowed to make your fall term decisions and your winter term decisions after the winter term. So like in April, May. And so, or likely even, it may not even open until your exams are done. So May, June, technically it probably would occur. But this gives you lots of time to just let things develop and find out the right information about what your plans are, have appointments with an academic advisor, do GPA calculations with them, and figure out what's going to make the most sense to your plans. And so you have many months to work this out and to even see how winter term goes for yourself as well, because you may not choose to even exclude any courses. You might not choose to exclude courses from both terms. It really depends on what your plans are and what's going to suit you. So we want you to take this time to have a big picture view and talk to the right people and find the right information so that you're not rushed and feeling pressure to make a decision that might turn out not to be beneficial to you. So all information about these timelines is going to come out in January.
Okay, so the big question here is, do I have to exclude any courses? And the overwhelming answer there is no, you do not. You are not obligated at all to make any exclusions to your GPA. If you are satisfied with the grades you've gotten in both the fall and the winter term, you do nothing at all. You don't have to say you're keeping your grades. If you're not excluding them, you just take no action at all. And more details about how students will exclude their grades will be sent out in January, as Lesley mentioned. But when we went through this exercise for the very first time back in May, at the beginning of, or at the end of the 2020 winter term, that was one of the most prevalent questions that we had is, do I have to choose an option for all my grades? And the answer to that is no. At the very least, we, as Lesley said, we encourage students to wait until May when you can see your grades for the entire year and make a more informed choice. There's no rush to do anything here. And the other thing to remember is that for most students, excluding grades will really have a very minimal impact on your GPA. It will not affect applications to future faculties. So it is more of an immediate concern. And when I say immediate, I mean for things that apply to this year. So your eligibility for certain programs that may have a minimum GPA. For example, if you're in an honors program and you have to maintain a 3.0 GPA, if you happen to get one grade that pulled you down below 3, you can exclude that grade, and that allows you to maintain your eligibility for your program. Those are the kinds of situations where excluding grades can be beneficial. But again, we will be probably doing some retroactive academic assessments once all of the dust has settled at the end of the winter term, and we have a better picture of what students' GPAs are. So this is not the time to panic about any of that. We just want you to take the time to understand what the impact will be for you if you choose to exclude 1 or 2 grades or none at all. And academic advisors are available to assist you with that. Ali, can you please switch the slide? Thank you. So again, should you exclude a grade? What can be gained from possibly excluding a grade? For most students, again, if you think about a grade point average as an average, 3 to 6 credit hours out of 90 or 120 or more really doesn't make a huge difference over your entire degree. For 1 term or 2 terms, it can make somewhat of a difference. And those are the conversations that you want to have with an advisor. We can't emphasize enough that this is not going to help you get into medicine. It's not going to help you get into dentistry or pharmacy. They have their own adjusted GPA calculations, and they will use the grades you have, even if you've excluded them. If they are using an adjusted GPA calculation that involves excluding lower grades, they will continue to do that the way they normally do. And the choices that you make about excluding individual grades now are not going to change the processes that other professional programs have. But like we said, you know, if you need to maintain a minimum GPA for entry to a particular honors program within your faculty, if you have to maintain a certain GPA for awards or scholarships, it can be beneficial. And we also have to make sure too that when we're having these conversations that you actually know how to calculate your GPA. Again, when we went through this exercise in May, we discovered that a lot of students really didn't understand how their GPAs were being calculated. And there is a link that we can share. I don't know if Ali is able to find it right away, but we will get it to you. There's an online GPA calculator that you can use.
Oh, sorry, Kathy. I'm just looking for that link. I'll pop it in the chat in a sec.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And so this, because it's very easy to use, it actually does calculations for you. You just plug in your grades and the number of credit hours that each course is worth, and it actually calculates the GPA for you. So that allows you to try out some different scenarios and actually see what kind of a difference excluding 1 or 2 grades might have on your GPA. And the effect will be less the more credit hours you've attempted. So if you've only attempted 24 credit hours and you exclude 6, that is obviously going to have a bigger impact on your overall GPA than if you've attempted 96 credit hours and you exclude 6. There's going to be a smaller difference there. Another thing to just remember, I like how Ali refers to this as no backsies. This is a final decision. We can't reverse it if you change your mind and realize you probably should not have excluded a grade. And there will very likely be a deadline by which you have to make a choice. It'll be a generous deadline. Like Lesley said, it will probably not be till June at some point. You will have lots of time to have conversations and make a good decision. But once you make the decision, that will be a final decision. And again, I will reiterate, if you have any questions, ask an advisor. And we will try to work through different scenarios with you and help you make the best choice you can.
Well, that was very informative. Thank you, Lesley and Kathy, for sharing all of that great information. I'm wondering if students who are here, if there are any questions, if you want to, pop those into the chat. We can start looking at, I'll start sort of collapsing those, reading them out loud so we can get some answers. But we'll leave the chat open. You should be able to type your questions in if you have any. I guess as we're sort of waiting for questions to come through, if there are any, I would say, Molly, thank you to everyone who participated today. There's a question about when should we get our books on the reading list. Okay, so what I'm just going to mention here, because I do see some questions coming in, and what we're here to talk about today are how to finish the fall term, get ready for winter term, and grading options. So if you have other questions, you need to contact an advisor in your home faculty. So there's a question about online exams. That is something you need to talk to an advisor about in your home faculty. We're not going to address all of that now. The question about getting books on the reading list, when should you get those? You should sometime before you start classes is probably a good idea. The classes start on January 18th. So by January 18th, you need to be prepped for your courses.
I'll just add just a few points of note on the book list.
Please, yeah.
So you do need to get them before classes start, but also in the way that things are happening in the world right now, the sooner you can secure them, the better. So there might be supply issues. There might be issues with being able to actually go and purchase them. So some of the textbooks and readings might be available in other sources other than from the bookstore, but the bookstore is open, and you need to check their hours. They aren't considered an essential service allowed for students to go in and shop. And so there needs to be arrangements for curbside pickup if you're buying from the bookstore. If you're looking for textbooks that might be available through other sources like Chapters or Amazon, again, the sooner you look into that for delivery, because with the holiday season and there's a lot of online shopping going on, it really is slowing down the delivery of materials. So all of that could come into play, and if you don't order early enough, you may not have it in your possession soon enough to use it effectively at the beginning of class. So that would just be my points of advice.
Perfect. Thank you, Lesley. I actually have a question here. Sorry, someone, oh, there we go. So I actually have a question here that's coming through the chat, and it's a really good question. So the question says, in the email, it says that excluding a grade could have implications for your academic trajectory. What does that mean? So I can start off and then have Lesley and or Cassie sort of jump in. So those are the things that we were talking about in terms of, you know, your future plans. In particular, you know, it's the exclusion of the grade that you may, we don't want you to make a decision about how only you're thinking right in this very moment. So when we talked about excluding a grade is still going to count in an admissions GPA, that's really, you know, that's a good example of that. Kathy mentioned, you know, being eligible for an honors program. Those are the kinds of things that we're talking about. So maybe I'll let Lesley and Cassie fill in any gaps that I've left there.
Okay. One thing that jumps to my mind there is when we went through this exercise for the first time in May, and now that, you know, several months have passed and I meet with lots of students every day, and I've seen students who have excluded grades that they probably shouldn't have. And that's why we emphasize really understanding how your GPA is calculated. Because if your GPA is a 3.0 and you exclude a B+, that doesn't make your GPA higher. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about how GPAs are actually calculated. And so I do think that for me, that would have more of an impact on academic trajectory, possibly, is you can actually exclude grades that you shouldn't be. and it's important to understand and have those conversations with an advisor if you don't understand how excluding a grade. We can do the GPA calculations with you and show you what the difference is going to be.
And I think another really important point to that is how Kathy was explaining before that, like, if you have 24 credit hours completed and you exclude 6 credit hours from your grades or from your GPA, that's going to have a large, impact. But at the end of your degree program, because that's what the goal is to get you to a place where you don't have 24 credit hours under your belt, you have 120 credit hours under your belt. Those 6 credit hours are going to make such a very small difference in your GPA at the end of your degree, as opposed to what, you know, you may see after 24 credit hours. So don't let that impact that you see on the 24 credit hours sort of fool you to think that, oh, it's going to have this massive effect on my GPA at the end of my degree program, because it probably won't. There's a question here about, oh, sorry.
Can I just add another kind of, I guess, it's not
please.
directly answering the question, like the points that we're making about don't be fooled by the GPA calculation, that thinking excluding a grade is going to magically jump the numbers high, right? Because it really depends on how many credit hours we're talking about. But even bigger, I guess, reminder here, and it kind of brings us back to the beginning of the goal of this session, was finishing fall term strong. So like what's being offered to you this term is a singular course in fall and a singular course in winter. Unlike in last year's April, May in the winter term, when there was a whole bunch of different grading options allowed for any amount of courses you were taking, those changes were way more significant than what you really will achieve this time. And the big takeaway here is do your best to finish as strong as possible, because even if you exclude one course of benefit, it's the rest of the courses that really do matter. And so again, don't get so consumed with this idea of a grading accommodation is going to help me. The best thing to help you is you, and you need to do what you can in finishing out the next couple of weeks on your exams to be as prepared and go in as best as possible. You've put the time in all term. You've been resilient. You've hung on. Don't do anything to give it up now. See yourself through and try to do everything you can to perform the best way that you can under such extreme circumstances that you've all experienced this term.
Well, you know what, Lesley? I think that is the perfect way to end this session, with that reminder to bring us back to what we started talking about at the beginning, is that message of finish fall strong. We don't even want you to have to exclude any grades. Like, we don't want you to have to worry about that. So, you know, I think I've gotten to all the questions. As I said, those of you who I mentioned in the chat, those of you who have registered for the session through Career Connect, you will get a document with some updates, with the links and those kinds of things that will be helpful to you. But I'm going to say, for me, like, thank you very much again to everyone who joined us. I'll let Bridget, Kathy, and Lesley say goodbye as well. But thanks again, and we're looking forward to seeing you as soon as we can.
Thank you, everyone. And I do want to sincerely wish you the best for the end of your term, and to take the time for yourself during break. Take a breather, enjoy what you can, appreciate what you have. And we are here for you when we all get back in January and are prepared to help you make the right decisions for yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Lesley. That was very well said. You guys have worked really hard this term, and you just have a little bit longer to hang on. Use the resources that are available to you, and advisors are one of those many, many resources that are available to you as U of M students. So have a great break, and good luck on all of your exams.
Ditto. I don't think I have anything else to add.
Okay, everyone, I'm going to end the session now. So thank you again, and we look forward to chatting with you in various ways over the next little while. Take care, everyone.